Russell Harper thought he was fixing a washing machine. Sonya Delaney thought she was safe in her own home. But one vanished, and the other was left accused of a crime so savage the town of Willow Creek would never be the same. In Willow Creek, summer usually brought the gentle buzz of lawnmowers, kids racing bikes through quiet streets, and neighbors chatting over picket fences. It was a place where people trusted each other, where locks were more for show than for safety. But on a humid morning in July 2018, that peace was torn apart. A sanitation worker named Harold Jenkins was on his usual route, emptying trash bins, behind an old, abandoned gas station on the edge of town. The building had been closed for years, its walls tagged with fading graffiti, and hardly anyone paid attention to it anymore. Harold was about to toss a torn black trash bag into the compactor when something caught his eye. The bag looked odd, way too heavy for typical household garbage, and it had a horrible, sweet rotting smell that made Harold gag. Curiosity and dread fought inside him, but he finally tore the bag open with his gloved hands. I think what he saw inside made him stagger backward and drop the bag. Bundled in layers of sticky duct tape and cheap plastic sheeting were what looked like human body parts, unmistakably pale and lifeless, and folded in a way no living person could survive. Harold felt bile rising in his throat, and he stumbled to the corner of the lot to call 911, his hand shaking so badly he nearly dropped his phone within minutes. Willow Creek police arrived and cordoned off the scene. The lead detective, Lisa Mendez, was hardened by experience, but even she was shocked by what she saw. The plastic sheeting was wrapped tightly, almost professionally, to stop any fluids from leaking out, as though someone had wanted to hide the remains for as long as possible. Officers began searching the overgrown grass and cracked concrete around the gas station for more evidence. But there was nothing. No weapons, no blood, no clear footprints. Whoever had left the body here had done it with care, as the forensics team unpacked the remains. They made another chilling discovery. The victim's head and hands were missing, making any quick identification impossible. Dental records, fingerprints, and facial recognition would be useless, leaving only DNA as a possible clue, which could take weeks. People in Willow Creek soon heard whispers of the grisly find, and the entire community was thrown into fear. Who was the victim? Who had done something so cruel? And why choose their quiet, trusting town to dump a body? Detectives started with the usual theories. Maybe it was a gang hit, since dismemberment sometimes pointed to drug-related violence. Or maybe the killer had personal rage and wanted to erase the victim's identity. But the town didn't have many active gangs, and there had been no missing person reports of anyone fitting the few physical details they could gather. Forensic investigators noted that the dismemberment was done with clean, careful cuts, more like a butcher or surgeon than a street criminal. It was a disturbing sign of how calm and practiced the killer might have been, as the remains were carefully loaded into the coroner's van. Detective Mendez stood staring at the deserted gas station. How long had the body been lying there? Just a few steps away from a public road? Had the killer driven right through town with the body in their car, confident no one would look twice? The questions multiplied, but answers were nowhere to be found. The police knew they had only one chance to solve this if they missed the smallest clue. The killer might vanish forever, taking the victim's name with them into the dark. The days following the gruesome discovery at the abandoned gas station seemed to stretch on forever. News of the horrifying find spread through Willow Creek like wildfire. Parents kept their children indoors. Neighbors began locking their doors for the first time in years, and whispers about a serial killer haunted every conversation. The police worked around the clock, but they faced one giant obstacle. They had no way of knowing who the victim was. With the head and hands missing, there was no chance for quick identification, and DNA analysis would take weeks. There were no missing person reports that matched the victim's size or clothing, no local complaints of suspicious activity, and no tips from worried relatives. It was like the victim had simply appeared out of nowhere. Detective Lisa Mendez led her exhausted team through every possible lead. They dug into missing person cases from surrounding towns, checked local hospitals, even visited homeless shelters, hoping someone might recognize the clothes pulled from the plastic wrapping. Nothing. The victim was a ghost. The only clue they had was the horrifying state of the body, the clean, Practiced dismemberment suggested a killer who had done this before, or at least someone who'd carefully planned every step. People in Willow Creek grew restless, their imaginations running wild. Some believed it was the work of a traveling serial killer, someone passing through town and leaving horror behind. Others thought it might have been a local, hiding in plain sight, a quiet neighbor no one would ever suspect. Each day without answers made the fear worse, and rumors only added fuel to the fire. Then, nearly 3 weeks after the body was found, a piece of luck changed everything. A woman named Claire Simmons was walking her dog along a narrow drainage ditch that ran through the edge of town. Her dog, a restless beagle, pulled her toward a storm drain, partly clogged with trash and mud. Claire tried to tug him away, but he refused to budge. Curious, she looked closer and spotted something caught in the debris, a backpack, heavy with water and coated in grime. She pulled it free and, despite the stench, decided to peek inside. What she found was shocking. Wrapped in damp, moldy clothes were small personal items, a pack of cigarettes, a lighter, and a flattened, filthy leather wallet. Inside the wallet, the driver's license was still readable. Russell Harper. Claire immediately called the police, her voice trembling. Officers arrived quickly and took the backpack to their forensics team, who confirmed that the belongings had likely been sitting in the drain for weeks. The timing matched perfectly with the discovery of the remains. Russell Harper's name brought both relief and dread. At last, they had an identity. Russell was a local mechanic, known for working odd jobs and sometimes disappearing for a week or two. His family had never reported him missing, assuming he was off on another one of his quiet getaways. That detail alone nearly doomed the case to remain unsolved forever. Now, with a name and a rough timeline, police could dig deeper. Who would want Russell dead? Would butcher him so cleanly and dump his body like trash? 1,000 new questions were born the moment they finally learned who he was. With Russell Harper's name finally confirmed, police felt a rush of hope. At least now they had a victim to investigate. Russell was 35 years old, a mechanic who had lived in Willow Creek most of his life. Friends described him as quiet, a bit of a drifter who sometimes took days or weeks away from work with no explanation. He had no serious criminal history, no violent enemies, and no known drug habits. In many ways, he seemed like the last person who would end up brutally dismembered and thrown away. Detectives hoped that digging into Russell's life would reveal a motive, but instead, they hit a wall. His finances were stable enough. No gambling debts, no shady connections. His phone records were boring, a few calls to his sister, occasional work contacts, nothing suspicious. Police searched Russell's small rented apartment. It was tidy, almost too tidy, with hardly any personal items. The only clue was a note, taped to his fridge with a grocery list, ordinary and unhelpful. It was as though someone had already cleaned out anything that might link Russell to a dangerous secret. Detectives felt uneasy about the lack of evidence. It was as if Russell had been targeted randomly, or by someone who knew exactly how to leave no trail. Meanwhile, the forensics team went back to the evidence from the garbage bag, studying every inch of duct tape that had been wrapped around the remains. They used new chemical methods to recover even the faintest fingerprints, hoping the killer had slipped up. After long, painstaking work, a partial fingerprint was found. It was faint and smudged, but still readable. When they ran it through the database, a match came back that surprised everyone. The print belonged to a woman named Sonya Delaney. Sonya lived in Willow Creek, just 2 blocks from the abandoned gas station where the remains had been dumped. She had no record except a minor traffic ticket from years before. There was nothing in her history to suggest violence. She worked as a home-based seamstress and mostly kept to herself. Police had no reason to suspect her until the fingerprint appeared. Detectives couldn't ignore the connection. They quietly began watching Sonya's house, looking for any unusual movements. Sonya's routine was painfully normal. She bought groceries, went for short walks, and had almost no visitors. But the fingerprint on the duct tape was undeniable. There had to be a link between her and Russell's death. Investigators got a warrant and moved in to search Sonya's home. In her neat little basement, under a loose floorboard, They found what made their blood run cold. There were heavy-duty saws, blades, and plastic sheets, stained with what looked like old blood. They also found a filthy mattress rolled up tightly in plastic. When the forensics team tested it, the results confirmed their fears. The blood belonged to Russell Harper. Suddenly, everything shifted. Sonya, an ordinary woman living a quiet life, was now their main suspect. Police took her into custody, but the case felt far from over. Russell's death had seemed random at first. But now there was a chilling sense that something far darker was hidden behind Sonya's front door. Waiting to be uncovered, Sonya Delaney sat in the police interrogation room, her face pale and her hands trembling as officers tried to piece together what had happened in her basement. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Sonya insisted she was innocent of murder. She told detectives a story that was hard to believe, yet impossible to ignore. According to her, Russell Harper had come to her house to help fix a broken washing machine. She claimed they barely knew each other, but he'd been recommended by a neighbor for odd jobs. Sonya said she paid him in cash and left him alone in the basement while she ran upstairs to make tea. That was when, she said, everything went wrong. Sonya told investigators that a man broke into her home through the back door while Russell was working downstairs. She described him as tall, wearing a hood, his face hidden. She said he grabbed her, forced her into a corner, then went down into the basement. Sonya claimed she heard a struggle, a crash, then silence. When she finally had the courage to go down the stairs, she found Russell lying dead, blood soaking through the mattress, she said. The hooded man threatened her, telling her to help him dispose of the body or he would kill her too. Detectives listened to every word, trying to read her face for lies. The details were strange but not impossible. Sonya had no criminal record, no history of violence, and no known connection to Russell beyond a simple repair job. Still, the evidence in her basement was hard to ignore. There were tools stained with blood, and the mattress looked like it had been used to soak up the worst of the killing. Forensics showed Russell had been dismembered with the saws hidden under Sonya's floor. That level of planning didn't match the story of a random break-dash-in. Police checked for signs of forced entry at Sonya's home but found nothing conclusive. There were no broken locks, no footprints, no shattered glass. Yet Sonya refused to change her story. She stuck to her claim that the hooded man had planned everything and forced her to help hide the crime. Detectives widened their search, pulling CCTV footage from every store and gas station near Sonya's neighborhood. After hours of scanning video, they found something both helpful and disturbing. On a liquor store camera across the street from Sonya's house, a figure in a hooded sweatshirt could be seen entering her yard a few days before Russell was last seen alive. The man was tall with a broad build, just like Sonya described, but the footage was too grainy to identify his face. This blurry clue gave Sonya's story a spark of truth. Maybe she wasn't lying after all. Maybe someone had come to her house with a plan to kill Russell, leaving her no choice but to take part in covering it up. Or maybe, detectives worried, Sonya was a skilled manipulator, spinning a half-true story to save herself. With no way to identify the hooded man, police were stuck between two chilling possibilities. Either Sonya was a cold-blooded killer, or the real murderer was still free, watching Willow Creek from the shadows. The town of Willow Creek held its breath as Sonya Delaney's trial began. Reporters lined the courthouse steps, neighbors whispered in grocery store aisles, and fear simmered under the surface. Sonya sat quietly in the courtroom, her face drawn and pale. The evidence against her with brutal precision. They showed the jury photos of the tools hidden beneath her floor, the stained mattress, the duct tape with her partial fingerprint, and the body of Russell Harper, cut apart with shocking care. They painted her as a cold, calculated killer who had lured an innocent mechanic into her basement to die. But Sonya's defense team fought hard to tell a different story. They reminded the jury of the hooded man caught on the liquor store's security camera. They argued that Sonya had been terrified and forced to help cover up the crime. They described her as a quiet, gentle woman with no history of violence, someone who would never commit such a savage act on her own. The grainy footage of the hooded man offered a small hope that there was more to the story, that a second unknown person had masterminded the killing. The jury struggled. There was no clear proof of a break-in, no fingerprints from a mystery man, no other witnesses who could back up Sonya's story. Yet the CCTV footage planted doubt in their minds. Some believed Sonya had made up the entire break-in, while others wondered if she truly had been a victim herself. In the end, the jury found her guilty of murder and tampering with evidence, but they could not agree on whether she had acted alone. Sonya was sentenced to life in prison, but her insistence on her innocence never wavered. After the verdict, the police continued investigating, desperate to solve the final mystery. They studied the liquor store video frame by frame, consulted facial recognition experts, tried to match the hooded man's height and build to anyone with a record in the region. Every effort ended in frustration. The stranger had vanished, leaving no name, no trace, just an unsettling silence. Detectives feared they had convicted the only person they could, but not the person most responsible. Willow Creek was left with questions that refused to go away. Who was the hooded man? Was he the true killer, manipulating Sonya into a desperate cover-up? Or was Sonya the true mastermind, spinning a half-plausible story to distract investigators from her own brutality? The thought that the hooded figure might still be out there, living among them, haunted the town. People locked their doors now. They walked in pairs after dark. An uneasy feeling settled over Willow Creek, like a permanent fog. The murder of Russell Harper showed how close a small town could come to letting evil slip through its fingers. Claire Simmons's dog had not pulled her toward that backpack. In the drain, Russell might never have been identified, and Sonya might never have faced trial. Even now, pieces of the truth feel just out of reach. Somewhere in the shadows of Willow Creek, the answers to what really happened in Sonya Delaney's basement might still be waiting, hidden, never to be found.